If we haven't met yet, my name is Joe. I'm our campus pastor here in Hollywood. And this month, we have been taking some time to just dive deep. We've been trying to create space to just allow God to do something in a fresh, new way, to hear Him with new ears, to see Him through new eyes. And if you're a guest especially, we are so glad that you're here. You are our why. We have been praying for you before we ever met you, that everything we do through our worship and through the scriptures and through our conversation together, we are absolutely convinced that Jesus is the only hope for a lost and broken world. And that today, in some way that goes beyond us, our prayer, if you're on a journey trying to make sense of who Jesus is, our prayer is that some way, somehow, His love would just arrest you at your core. Because that's why we're here. That's why today we're taking time to just tell God how thankful we are. And that before it comes on Thursday when everyone else is reminded of the power of gratitude, we wanted to begin this week planting seeds of gratitude that hopefully will go beyond Thursday and into next year, because a grateful heart can actually change a nation. A grateful spirit can be the very thing that turns the course of our future. And I asked my friend James to be here because everything sounds cooler with keys behind it. So can you guys show some love to my boy James? In 1 Thessalonians 5, as we read, I love how it kicks off. It says, "Now we ask you, brothers and sisters, to acknowledge those who work hard among you, who care for you in the Lord, and who admonish you." And verse 13, "Hold them in the highest regard and love because of their work." See, I love how this passage ignites in us a reminder of what happens to a culture, what happens to a community, what happens to a people when we raise the ethic, when we establish a new standard, a new narrative, a new bar of what it truly means to be human. And here what we have is Paul trying to remind not just the Thessalonians, but to remind us what the future of humanity truly could look like. Because when he says, "I want you to acknowledge those who work hard among you," what that tells us is that there was a culture where those that pushed the envelope forward, those that were driven by ambition and those that had a desire to do the most good, they were being suppressed by the culture, because you know what you don't want to be around when you're choosing less? Those that choose more. See, there's nothing worse to a culture than somebody who will not settle for the status quo. And what Paul is diving into here is saying, I need you to establish a new ethic. I need you to see that there's those individuals that are moving to the highest place, and I want you to hold them in the highest regard. And there are so many incredible people here at Mosaic that make this the most unique place in Los Angeles and across the world. Like this room is filled with the most talented, the most compassionate, the most loving, the most risk-taking people that you'll ever meet. And there's two individuals that are part of our community that you may not know, but I know. And they are Kat and Jorge. Kat and Jorge, can you stand up real quick? I know you're awkward, but you're like, don't, stand up. This is Kat and Jorge. Turn around, say hi, wave. You can sit now, yeah. See, what you don't know about Kat and Jorge is that during the pandemic, they took a huge risk. And they had a dream on their heart to open up not just a barber shop, but open up a space that men could come and get not just a haircut, but they could actually come back to life. And they wanted to create an experience where people could know that we're going to give you a haircut and we're going to groom you, and they have all this technology that they've started never even heard of, all these acronyms, and Kat would just grab me in a room and she puts wax in my nose hairs. And she's like, there's a scientific method. It's just called pain, Kat. And she's like, your wife will love it, trust me. Right? And they've gone above and beyond. And I can't tell you how many people that they have loved on during the pandemic that they've cared for, because they're not just opening up a men's shop, they're opening up a safe place for people to know that they're loved. And they did this in our community, and they took huge risks. And I can't tell you how many people walk into their shop and they go, there's something different about this place. And yeah, you know why there's something different about this place? Because there's different people in this place. And I just want to thank you for how you've risked and you've taken huge sacrifices. And I know there's been a financial burden on your life, but I believe that God is going to bless Purpose LA, all right? Little plug, at Purpose LA. God is going to bless that, because not just the place, but the people. And God's hand is on your life. And as your friend and as your brother, I thank you that you didn't choose the easy way. Thank you when you could have lowered the bar. You said, no, we're going to risk greater and see how God elevates our faith. So you got to have people that set a new standard of what it means to truly be human. If I can be really honest, I love my wife. She is the greatest gift I've ever received, but sometimes she frustrates the mess out of me. Yep. She's not here, so I can say that. And what I mean by that is what she really frustrates me is sometimes it'll be done for the night. In bed, it's 1, 2 a.m., and just in it. Take my contacts out, wash my face. Then I'll just hear, she pulls out the vacuum. And my wife, about once a month, will just decide to deep clean at 2 a.m. And I just hear this vacuum. I hear the mop bucket swashing on the wall. She's got a weed whacker sometimes. I'm like, what are you doing, babe? And she just decides to deep clean in the middle of the night. And I'm like, babe, why? Let's do this in the morning. And she's like, no, I'm in a zone. I got that wind, and I don't want to waste it. And she goes hard. And then I have a choice. I can either lay in bed, I can let her do her thing, I could try to pull her down and say, stop, do less, or I can meet her at her excellence. And how many times in life do we lower the bar? We try to pull people down to less rather than meet them as they're calling us to more. See, I think we need to flip the script. I think we need to find those incredible women and men that are always pushing the envelope forward, that are always taking the big risks, that aren't okay with okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to decide that there's a new ethic of what it means, especially to be connected to the heart of God, is that you do not become less, but you always strive to become more. And I think it's time that we highlight and elevate that. Because if you're somebody who in your friend group or in your family that is that irritant, I'm giving you permission to be the irritant that people need. And you have those people in your life, right? We all have them, right? They're the ones that call us to more. They're the ones that annoy us, that frustrate us, that expect more of us. You know who they are? They're the people that you do not call when you need to get the right advice. I'm going to say that. See, you know who they are? They're the people that when you know you need to call them when you're at the crust of a moment, or when somebody in your life is pressing against you, and they're the one that you need to call, that they're not going to tell you what you want to hear. They're going to tell you what you need to hear. That's the irritant in your life. You know who's not the irritant in your life? The person you do call. The roommate who just tells you what you want to hear. Oh, yeah, it was their fault. They don't appreciate you. They take you for granted. I don't know why I sound like a valley girl, right? But I live in the valley. But you know why we do that? It's because it's easier to swim with minnows than it is to live with sharks. But I think we need to be okay with those individuals in our lives that push us forward, that call us to more, that do not let us settle, that are the irritant, that doesn't just make us better, but they make the world better. And we need to just reclaim the power of our words. He says, hold them in the highest regard and love because of their work. You need to find those people that are establishing a new ethic, and then you need to elevate their stories. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse 24, I love this verse that speaks on the beauty and wonder and power of our tongue. It says, gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. I love that. That gracious words, that when we take the time to speak truth into each other, when we take the time to speak life and love into each other, it's as if it's a sweet deposit into our soul. It's honey. Who doesn't like honey? My wife is from New Zealand, so we are a tea family. We've got every tea you can imagine. We got English breakfast. We got a lemon ginger, a wild sweet orange for when we want a little, kick, uppity up. We've even got this white pomegranate cherry. And it's just exactly what and all the kind of different teas that we have, really we don't drink tea in our house. We drink honey. Because no matter what the flavor is, when I sip it, I'm like, tastes like honey. Because my wife just squeezes that honey bottle in there, stirs it up, and I realize that I love tea because I love honey. Right? And the scriptures tell us that that's what our words are. Our words, when we speak it into one another with intention, with focus, with value, it's as if it's honey to the soul. Has someone ever spoke life into you, told you something about you that maybe you did not even see, encouraged you, elevated you? Has someone ever done that, spoke life into you, and you were worse off because of it? No. Right? It's impossible for someone to speak life into you and be worse off because of it. So why do we hoard the very thing that can always bring us to more? Why do we get stingy with the kindness, get stingy with the grace, get stingy with the love? Maybe it's because we didn't have an example of what it looked like. Maybe it's because rather than speak life into you growing up, somebody told you that you didn't matter. Somebody told you that you didn't have value. Somebody highlighted all of your worst moments and they told you this is who you are. But what I want you to hear as clear as day today is that there's gracious words like a honeycomb that want to rest inside of your soul that no one else can say about you but the God who loves you more than you could ever imagine. Gracious words. We yesterday had a soccer party for our second oldest, Indigo. And he played soccer for the first time, and he had a blast. And it was the end of the year party, and all the families got together, and they had pizza, and the kids were running around having a blast. And at the end, it came time to give them their trophies. And they're sitting on the floor, and the coach, who'd never coached before, got up, and immediately he just starts getting emotional. You ever know somebody's just a softie when they have that look where you're like, oh yeah, you're Charmin. You're going to break in any moment. We have that person. His name's Rob. Yeah. And Rob is singing worship over here. And Rob is our charm. He's our guy. When we know that about Rob, he's soft as soft can be. But it's because Rob is all heart. When Rob opens his mouth, love goes ahead of him, goes before him. That you never have to question what his intention is. And he doesn't just speak it out of possibility. He speaks it out of a deep core of what he believes. So when he worships here, he's not just worshiping for him, he's worshiping for you. He's trying to tell you that you matter so much that it brings him to tears. And that was Coach Wade. And Coach Wade gets up, and before he utters a word, he just gets emotional. And he takes the time to speak life into every single one of these kids. And he looks at the trophy and he sees the name, and the first one is Aiden. And instead of just saying, Aiden, you had a great season, he says, Aiden, I want you to know that there were moments in this season when other kids gave up on defense and you fought to make sure our goal was covered. Aiden, you were the lifeblood of our team. You watched, and Aiden, just a smile over his face. He's like, I was. And he said, Aiden, thank you for bringing your best every single week. And he got up and everybody cheered. And then the next kid came up and he told him specifically a moment in the season that he saw them, and he elevated and he spoke life into them, and all the kids were so overwhelmed with joy. And then he got to Indigo, our son. And I said, you better not mess this up, Coach Wade. He looked at him and he said, Indigo, this is your first time ever playing. And you were the one that every single week you never gave up. You had the hustle that our team needed to keep going. And even though we didn't keep score, even though there were no standings, you played each play as if the game was on the line. And thank you, Indy, for being our Energizer bunny. And our son, Indy, if you know him, you got to earn it. He's hard. And he got up there and he grabbed his trophy and he looked at me and he like had the biggest smile. Like, Dad, he saw me. Oh, dang. He saw me. See, that's why the words that we speak into each other are so important. Because it's not just the words, it's the reminder. I saw you. And even when nobody else saw you, even when you thought you were forgotten, even when no one else was looking, see, I want you to hear me. At your darkest moment, at your most isolated moment, when you felt so alone, I'm telling you what God was fighting for. He was trying to remind you, I see you. And maybe you're here right now, and you feel so invisible. You feel so unseen. You feel like you don't matter. If you hear nothing else, I want you to hear that when everybody else saw you at your worst, God always saw you at your best. And even more than that, He longs to pull out the best in you each and every moment. See, gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. And then in verse 14, he says, and we urge you, brothers and sisters, to warn those who are idle, encourage the timid, help the weak, be patient with everyone. Make sure that nobody pays back wrong for wrong, but always try to be kind to each other and everyone else. This is so important. Make sure that nobody pays back wrong for wrong. Isn't that so hard? Isn't it hard not to pay back wrong for wrong? Or is it just me? Doesn't it feel good to pay back wrong for wrong? Yes, you know how it feels good? Taken. Liam Neeson reminds us, we love wrong for wrong. He's built a whole career on it. Revenge. It feels so good to do that. And I know for me, I experience that every single day here in LA. It's called the 101. And every day, we're driving my kids to school in the same way, and we have to hop on that on-ramp, and it's a fight at 8 in the morning, and they don't want you in. And on that arm, every time I try to go, and I'm trying to eat, let me get it. And you know who that person is? where they see you trying to merge in, but they won't look at you. And you're trying to make eye contact, let me in, and they're acting like they only drive to the left. You see me. They just ignore you and cut you off. I'm like, and immediately, if you're like me, immediately my first instinct is, it's okay, you got it. Absolutely not. My first instinct is, I'm gonna get you back. And I find a way to get in that left lane, and as soon as I can, I'm gonna cut you off, and I'm gonna make sure you see me. I wish it wasn't true, but it's true. It's so easy to pay back a wrong for wrong. But the ethic that God is inviting us into is to pay back a wrong with a right. To actually begin treating not people how they treat you, but to actually treat people the way that God treats us. In the same way that he unleashes grace, the same way that he exudes forgiveness. He's inviting us to tap into that level of our humanity where we pay back wrong for right. And we begin to see how it doesn't just change the world around us, but it also changes the world inside of us. And then how this passage ends, the crescendo, is some of the most beautiful words that are written in the scriptures. Where it says, rejoice always. Pray continually and give thanks in all circumstances. Rejoice always. Pray continually. Give thanks in all circumstances. See, when everything's going incredible in your life, when you're just swimming in the wonder of all that God has done in your life, when you're just living at your highest, it's so easy to be grateful, isn't it? It's so easy to thank God, or to thank your spouse, or to thank politicians, or whoever you need to thank. It's so easy to lead from a place of gratitude when everything is going well, but I do not believe that is the measure of true gratitude. Because if you only thank God when things are going well, I don't think you've experienced the full nature of who he is in your life. That there's an environment, I think, that God invites all of us into, where we say thank you, and we give thanks in all circumstances. We give thanks in those moments when we are filled with uncertainty and doubt and fear. We give thanks in those moments when we're overwhelmed with despair and when life has not happened the way that we wanted it to, that we say thank you, because we know that just because life is not happening the way we want it to, it does not mean there is not life waiting ahead of us. It does not mean that there is not a future filled with wonder and joy and celebration that has God's fingerprints all over it. See, I do not want to be the one who only says thank you when I can see it with my eyes. See, I want to teach my spirit to say thank you even when I can't feel it in my bones. And I say thank you ahead of time. See, when our daughter was in the hospital fighting for her life at 6 months old, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, I was not ready to be grateful. I can just be honest with you, and I can tell you that the first natural response that came from my soul was not gratitude. It was fear. It was anger. It was confusion. It was doubt. It was worry. I was mad. And we had about 12 hours where we had to decide. We have no idea what tomorrow brings. She was in a fight for her life, and she might not make it through the night. And we had to decide, what are the seeds that we're going to plant? What is the story that we're going to fight for? We had to decide, are we only going to choose to trust God? Are we only going to choose to be thankful when he does what we want him to do? Or are we going to plant seeds to say, regardless of what tomorrow brings, God, we're going to declare that you're worthy of our gratitude. And we just sat there and we just said, thank you. And we just played worship music and we said, thank you. And we just FaceTime friends and we just declared thank you. Said, God, your fingerprints are all over our life. And if we only had 6 months with this girl, it was worth it because you're that good. And we just said, thank you. Because I didn't want our story, our family, to be known as those who hoarded it when nurses in the room needed to see if we believed it. When doctors were questioning everything, needed to see that we were still declaring how good he is. And we made a choice that regardless of the outcome, what's going to be rooted in us is gratitude. And because God is good, and because he just is who he is, our daughter is still alive. She's filled with joy. I held her earlier and I freaking broke down because every time I see her face, I remember when I looked at last night, I looked at a photo when she was like on her deathbed. And I save it on my phone because I never want to forget. Every time I look at her eyes, she's a reminder to me of how good God is. But I think it matters. It mattered to me that our family made that choice before God rescued her, to declare that God is always a rescuer. And maybe you're here right now and you just needed to be reminded of the power of gratitude. And maybe you're here and you're really fighting hard for it because you don't want to be grateful. Everything in you is resisting it, and it's as if there's like a rope tying you to your chair that's like, no, I'm not going to say thank you. No, I'm not going to do this. You know what he allowed to happen, and you're filled with bitterness and resentment. And the reason I want you to discover the gratitude the scriptures teach about right now is because I'm telling you, bitterness will hold you captive to your past, but forgiveness will always set you into a new future. And God wants to set you free. He wants to set your heart free. And for some of you here right now in this moment, you've been holding on for dear life. You just are overwhelmed with grief and despair and burdens that you cannot carry on your own. And you're just finally ready to just be done with it and to cut the strings that are trying to hold you in your past, and you're ready to be free. And I know the first choice for some of you here today is the choice to trust Jesus with your life. So I want us all to bow our heads and close our eyes together. If that's you right now, and you just walked into this room just feeling so burdened and feel so heavy, but you're ready to let the God who loves you completely and utterly set you free. You're ready to trust Jesus with everything, to give him all your pain, all your trauma, all your worry, all your doubts, all your insecurity. And you're ready to just place it in his hands and say, Jesus, I'm done holding on to this. I can't do it any longer. And you're ready to just have this exchange where you give him your life and then he gives you his. If that's you, you're ready to cross over the line of faith and say yes to Jesus, then all you got to do is say these simple words. Say, Jesus, I give you my life. That's it. Jesus, I give you my life. And it's with those words, you begin a conversation with God where you let the guilt and the shame go, and you let the grace and the freedom come in, where you let the worry and the anxiety float away, and you let him just whisper peace and hope inside of your soul. Jesus, I give you my life. Okay, if you prayed that prayer right now and you invited Jesus to take a hold of your life and your future, then right now I want you to raise your hand so I can pray over you. Beautiful. I see you. Come on, hold it up. Hold it up, because the reason it's important to make a moment, to make a declaration, is because I want you right now in this moment to reject your past and to say yes to your future. And I want you to know that Jesus sees you in this moment. He does not see you for any moment in your past. He sees you for a new future. He sees you for a new you. And he wants you to know that the thing that he is most grateful for is you. There's nothing that matters more to him than you. Father, I pray for every hand that is held high right now as a soul that has realigned themselves back to you. I pray right now, Jesus, you would wrap them in your love. You would remind them that there is nothing that they could do that could keep them from you. And I pray that in this moment, they would just swim in your presence. Jesus, we thank you that we are always simply one choice away from you. And so we pray that every hand in this room, when they walk out of this place, people could see a difference in them and it could point directly to you. We love you, Jesus. We thank you. And we ask all this in your name. Amen and amen. Hey, Mosaic, right now, can we thank God for everyone who chose to follow him today? Beautiful.